Bismillah, alhamdulillah, sallallahu ala rasulillah, ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. To proceed, inshallah, today we have Bab al-Infisal, which is the last station or the last chapter in this qism or section of al-Haqa'iq or realities. And then in fiqh we will have the chapter on the conditions in marriage. Which is basically, if you want to translate it could be prenuptial agreements. What could be valid in the prenuptial agreements and what is not valid. First, Shaykh al-Harawi rahimahullah ta'ala, in his book Manaazil As-Saa'ireen, in the chapter of al-Infisal, which is the 90th chapter, the 90th station, and it's a symbolic station because it is basically the end of the section on realities, and then we will start the endings, the nihayat, the section on endings, in the next station, inshallah. So we will talk about the significance of this station and why it is to Imam al-Harawi a higher station than al-Ittisal, for instance. Because you may wonder, we just got done with the station of al-Ittisal. Al-Ittisal is connection or attachment, and if al-Infisal, detachment from what? Detachment from the world. Why? To be attached to God or to connect with God, like you separate from the worlds to connect or to be with God. So why would he put al-Ittisal as the 89th station and al-Infisal as the 90th station? How could the means be higher than the ends? If al-Infisal, detachment, is a means to al-Ittisal, connection, why would it be higher? So we'll discuss this. Shaykh rahimahullah starts here by saying, قال الله عز وجل ويحذركم الله نفسه. Allah the Almighty said, and Allah warns you of Himself. And Allah warns you of Himself. So why did the Shaykh choose this particular ayah to begin the chapter, the station? And Allah warns you of Himself. This is the station of al-Infisal. I think that the Shaykh chose this to warn us of a type of separation or disconnectedness or detachment that spells damnation for us, which is to separate from Allah. Allah is saying that even after you arrive here, you are at the 90th station. The Shaykh is trying to say, you are at the 90th station, you're getting done with the section of al-Haqa'iq or realities, you're moving to the section of the endings or nihayat. And this is the station where you should separate from all else. That is called the siwa. Everything other than Allah is called the siwa, all else, and be connecting with Allah. And this is the station where you're walking to Allah not with yourself or by yourself, you're walking to Him by Him after the station, in the nihayat or the endings. But the Shaykh wants to say that if you reach here, don't feel too safe, because you can still get disconnected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You could still get abandoned or disconnected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you swerve, if you deviate, if you move away, if you turn away. And people do. And our righteous predecessors used to say, al-Hayy la tu'man alayhi al-fitna. As long as you are alive, fitna, you should not feel secure from fitna. Or as long as someone is alive, fitna would still be feared for them. Um, this is an important beginning. Just to warn anyone who may be self-deluded or who may think that achieving certain ahwal or certain spiritual states gives them immunity and they can do whatever they want or they could be heedless even momentarily. Then the Shaykh said, ليس في المقامات شيء فيه من التفاوت ما في الانفصال ووجوهه ثلاثة. There is nothing in the station that has more expanse than detachment. It has three aspects. Tafawut is variance. It is basically expanse. This is a station. And why is he saying this? There is none of the stations or nothing in the stations that has more expanse than detachment. Because to the Shaykh, this is a very sort of pivotal station. This is the end of all the stations where you are walking to Allah by yourself. Like, your intellect, your heart, your spirit, and then this is the end, and now you need to separate from all the previous stations. And that's why he puts it higher than al-ittisal, because he means to say that al-infisal is not only to disconnect from the world, to disconnect from your lusts, to disconnect from your greed, to disconnect from your ego. Al-infisal is also to disconnect from all the previous stations. And al-infisal is to basically disconnect, to have complete disconnection from the self, to the point that you disown all the previous stations and you walk now, you journey now to Allah, only by Allah. And as we explained before, we did talk before about what a Sunni understanding of self-annihilation may be like, and we may talk a little bit about it at the end, inshallah. Then the Shaykh says, أحدها, so he said that there are three aspects of infisal, or disconnection, separation, detachment. أحدها انفصال هو شرط الاتصال وهو الانفصال عن الكونين بانفصال نظرك إليهما وانفصال توقفك عليهما وانفصال مبالاتك بهما. The first is a detachment that is a condition of the connection or attachment, which is the detachment from the two worlds, that is the world of the seen and the world of the unseen. Or he could mean the dunya and the akhirah. To detach from the two worlds, that's the dunya and the akhirah, or the seen and unseen. By ceasing to behold them, to consider them, or to care about them. Ceasing to behold them, to consider them, or to care about them. And as we said before, we have to have a proper sort of Sharia-compliant understanding of symbolisms, the Sufi symbolisms. We have to have proper Sharia-compliant Sunni understanding of these symbolisms. So certainly we will not stop caring about al-akhirah. We will not stop asking Allah for paradise, but He wants you to put things in perspective, because the pleasure of seeing Allah in paradise makes any other pleasure fade out to the point it is the same example. It is not going to vanish. Paradise is not going to vanish. You will not vanish. It is the example of the candle, the light of the candle and the light of the sun. Just keep this example in mind. The light of the candle exists even in the middle of the day. There is still light. The candle exists, and the light of the candle does exist ontologically. There is an existence for this light, but perceptually, phenomenally, not nominally, phenomenally, not ontologically, perceptually, does the light of the candle make any difference in the middle of a summer day? You know, when the sun is shining. Like if you bring a candle, not on a gloomy day like this, but in the middle of a good summer day. Does the light of the candle make any difference? Do you recognize it? Do you see, like you put the light of the candle next to the sun, do you see it? You don't see it, but it does exist. Okay, so that's what we want to say. You will never cease to ask Allah for paradise, but you will understand that the pleasure of connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala far supersedes and surpasses all of those pleasures of the dunya and the akhirah. All of the pleasures of the dunya and the akhirah, including the pleasures of paradise. That is al-husna wa ziyada. Ziyada and more is the pleasure of seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the pleasure of having that final peace when you connect with the source, where we came from, you know, the holy subhanahu wa ta'ala. And people, you know, people can recognize this to some extent in this dunya, because for some people, the pleasure, lazzatul ma'rifah, for instance, the pleasure of gnosis, recognition, supersedes the pleasure of eating and drinking. Like if you're reading a good book, or if you are learning something new, and so someone tells you, you know, dinner is ready, or let us go out to have dinner, and you say, no, I don't want to, or I'm too busy. Does this happen ever to you? Should sometimes. So what are you forsaking here? The lower pleasure, the carnal, the fleshy pleasures, for the higher pleasure, the pleasure of knowledge, the pleasure of recognition. And if this is knowledge, this is just knowledge of the intellect sometimes. It could be a book about astrophysics, could be anything. But what about the knowledge of the heart, which is gnosis or recognition? And what about when this recognition is a recognition of the first, the one, subhanahu wa ta'ala, the real, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what about when this knowledge becomes eyewitnessing? Could you imagine anything like better than this, greater than this? And if you put anything next to this, it will fade out. Still exists, but it fades out. So we also, so the thing that when the Shaykh says you cease to behold them, you to consider them, to care about them, will you not care about the Prophet ﷺ? Is the Prophet ﷺ, you know, of the divine or of the creations of this world? He is of the creations of this world, the greatest, the highest, the most noble, or the noblest of the creations, but he's still of this world. Will you cease to care about the Prophet, or you cease to care about the prophets, or you cease to care about, you know? No, you will not. But it means that everything that you will care about now, you will care about it through Allah and for Allah. You will care about all as-siwa, everything else, through Allah and for Allah. Your connection to everything is secondary to this connection with Allah. So everything is through Allah and for Allah. And this infisal, he says, is a condition of ittisal. This detachment is a condition of the connection. And the reason why I did not translate ittisal as attachment, because you do not attach to the divine, because there could be some negative connotation when we talk about attachment to the divine. Connotations of wahdat al-wujud, which is ontological monism, or, you know, where, and that is a heretical belief. So that's why I did not translate al-ittisal as attachment, but it was full infisal. Detachment is fine, because you detach from the world. But when you connect with God, and al-ittisal is basically the opposite of al-infisal. It is just the direct antonym of al-infisal. But the difference in translation here is intended, because you connect with God, you do not attach to God, you do not merge with God, because that would be ittihadi aqidah, that would be the ontological union aqidah, and that is a heretical aqidah. Ontological union is a heretical aqidah. Okay. Then he will move to the second phase now, and he says, وَالثَّانِي انفصال عن رؤية الانفصال الذي ذكرناه وهو ألا يتراءى عندك في شهود التحقيق شيء يوصل أو يوصل بالانفصال منهما إلى شيء. The second is a detachment from seeing the detachment that we mentioned, and that is to not see in your ascertaining shuhud or witnessing anything that connects your detachment to anything. Anything that connects your detachment to anything. Well, that seems contradictory, doesn't it? Because he wants you to not see your detachment connecting you to anything. But didn't he say in the last level that this detachment is sought after for the attachment, for the connection? You know, it's a means. Why do you need to disconnect from the world? And disconnecting from the world does not mean that you don't take precautions and make provisions. And no, it just means disconnecting with your heart. That is not disconnecting from the world by basically staying at home and not going to work or anything of that nature. It's just disconnecting with your heart. Make your heart detached or not dependent on the world. So if he's saying in the last level that the detachment is meant for the attachment, now he wants you to not see any connection between this detachment and anything else. So he wants to have a complete separation now. You know, you want to be completely disconnected, no strings at all, completely disconnected, in order for you to rise to the next section of al-Nihayat or the endings. And what he may have meant, what the Shaykh may have meant, is that you certainly, as he usually says, he usually talks about this concept, we've gone over it so many times, that after you have achieved those higher stations, higher spiritual stations, you do not want now to see your action, your very acting, because the action is part of the actor. It's not even part of the actor, it is the actor. Hegel said that. You know, when he talked about the difference between qualities of a substance and activities of an agent, he said that the activities of the agent are not anything other than the agent. So your actions are your actions are you, and if you're seeing your actions, you're seeing yourself. If you're seeing your actions, you're seeing yourself. So he wants you to not see your actions, and he wants you to not see your actions leading to anything. So no sense of entitlement whatsoever, no sense of self-delusion. You know, you're happy with your accomplishments, you're happy with the spiritual stations you have reached. You find these, you get those rewards or waridat or spiritual imports from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they give you peace, they give you contentment, and then you basically contemplate your station and you say, it's probably because I have been doing this, or I have been doing that, or I have been staying away from this, or I have been. Now that means that you're seeing yourself, and he does not want you to see yourself, because he wants you to get ready for the next level, which is self-annihilation or fana. So stop seeing yourself. Stop attributing any success to yourself. Stop feeling any sense of entitlement. And when this detachment is a condition for your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he wants you to not see this detachment leading to anything, leading even to your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he wants you to consider both the al-infisal wal-ittisal to be two gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of them is not the cause of the other. One of them is not the cause of the other. Don't think that your detachment is the cause of your connection. Don't see a causal relationship between the two. Although in the previous level he said that one is a condition. Like you are not going to get to the other until you finish, you go through this. One is a condition for the other, but he wants you to see both as gifts and not see the causal relationship between them. Because if you see the causal relationship between them, you're seeing your own action, and that means you're seeing yourself. And there is nothing that can obstruct your vision from beholding Allah Azza wa Jal more than your ego. There is nothing worse than your ego. Nothing that is hijab aghlaz or a more dense veil between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than your ego. Then the Shaykh says, وَالثَّالِثُ, and then he will move now to the last level, and in the last level he usually dedicates this level for al-fana, or to al-fana, self-annihilation. And as we said before, self-annihilation or al-fana is not a necessary bridge to al-baqa, which is the highest station, to subsist by Allah, for Allah, with Allah. But some concepts of self-annihilation that the masters of suluk talk about are necessary for baqa, to subsist by Allah, for Allah, with Allah. Some concepts of it. And fana is never ontological, it is always perceptual. And in fact, the most Sunni fana is not even fana al-shuhud, the perceptual self-annihilation. When you don't cease to see yourself, it is fana al-iradat. When your will, your volitions, your wills, your volitions are in complete harmony with the divine volitions. As the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت له. None of you will have faith until his hawa, his own desires, are consistent with that which I have brought forth, are consistent or in conformity or in harmony with that which I have brought forth. So fana al-iradat is what is intended, what is praised by the Sunni masters of tasawwuf. So he says, الثالث انفصال عن الاتصال. The third is the detachment from the connection. وهو انفصال عن شهود مزاحمة الاتصال عين السبق. And that is a detachment from witnessing the attachment which competes with the truth of antecedence. فإن الانفصال والاتصال على عظم تفاوتهما في الاسم والرسم في العلة سيان. This is because both detachment and connection, despite their great variance in name and form, equally share the same flawed cause. What does he mean by this? So the first part, the first segment, he said the third is the detachment from the connection, and that is a detachment from witnessing the attachment which competes with the truth of antecedence. This means that when you see that your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is why symbolism is dangerous. Because this could be interpreted to mean what? To mean a condemnation of al-ithniniya. Ithniniya means two. And to be basically an invitation to wahdat al-wujud, ontological monism, or ontological union, ittihad. Because someone may interpret this to mean what? that the Shaykh is condemning your very seeing, or he's condemning what they say is a delusion of your existence. Because your existence is not real. The real is one. Al-Haq wahid. And that, we may say that this is true in a sense. Because when it comes to our existence is contingent, transient, and dependent, so not self-sufficient, not self-subsistent, and disposable. As we said before, like if one of us dies tomorrow, life will go on, nothing will happen. You know, some people will cry for a few days, but you know, so sort of the sun will rise and everything. So this is called contingent existence, and unnecessary existence versus wajib al-wujud, the necessary existence. That is God subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in that sense, the real is one. Al-Haq is one. But do we have a real ontological existence? Yes, we do. And that is something that al-Ittihadiyun, the Unionists or the Monists deny, that we even have a real ontological existence. Even though we qualify it by being contingent, by being unnecessary, by being disposable, by being dependent, all of this we recognize, but they don't recognize the existence. And what is the risk here? The risk is that if you don't recognize your existence, you will think that you're God. And that these are the, you know, and people who have this focus or have this misconception or notion of ittihad or wahdat al-wujud, they eventually will say subhani, subhani, or glory be to me, or ma fil jubba illa Allah, there is nothing inside the cloak except Allah or except God. Because you can't deny that there is something here, and if the real is one, then you are the real. Or you are of the real, you're part of the real, or you are an expression, although you are a manifestation of the real, but the real also is the real creator, so you are his real creation. So how do we, what did the Shaykh mean? And that's the crux of Sunni Tasawwuf now. The Tasawwuf of al-Mashayikh al-Arifin, the Tasawwuf of the Mashayikh who had true recognition, who were true Sunni Mashayikh, they vary among themselves in their compliance and in their carefulness in expression. Al-Imam al-Harawi rahimahullah was a little bit more into symbolism than other Mashayikh. And that is, and part of it, because you can't really put like a hard partition between eloquence and symbolism. Sometimes eloquence and brevity, you put eloquence next to brevity, and they result in symbolism. But the emphasis in the Quran on it being mubin, being clear, and wahy being clear, the Prophet himself being clear, that he is a Rasul mubin, that he is a messenger who is clear, that we should learn something from that emphasis, that clarity is important. So you do not sacrifice clarity in favor of eloquence and brevity. You should never sacrifice clarity in favor of brevity and eloquence. If you can, be eloquent and brief, but at the same time clear. These are the aphorisms of the different mashayikh that we cherish so much, because they're short, they're brief, they're memorable, or you can memorize them easily, and they have great meanings. So if brevity and eloquence will not compromise clarity, we're absolutely fine with that. We would love that. But once brevity and eloquence compromise clarity, then we will have a problem. The problem is some people who are not as upright as Imam al-Harawi may take his statement in so many different directions, as they did. So what does he say? What does he want you to, and why are we saying, why are we're not making this up? The seerah of Imam al-Harawi, his commitment to the Sharia, he was like a very strong Hanbali scholar. Not only in matters of fiqh, but in matters of aqidah, he was a very basically strict Hanbali scholar. He's the one who said, I am Hanbali as long as I am alive, and if I die, my recommendation to the people is to become Hanbalis. So we have to read him in light of that. You read his statements in light of his seerah and in light of his other works. So okay, so he wants you to not see انفصال عن الاتصال وهو انفصال عن شهود مزاحمة الاتصال عين السبق. The third is the detachment from the connection, and that is a detachment from witnessing the attachment which competes with the truth of antecedents. عين السبق, antecedents. And keep in mind here that two words are important here. Sabq and shuhud. Is he talking about ontological union? No, he's not. Is he's talking about ontological monism? No, he's not, because he's saying sabq, antecedents, and he's saying shuhud. So when you see your ittisal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want you to not see this, because you're still seeing yourself. He's not denying it that you exist, but he wants you to go back a little bit, 100 years. Did you exist 100 years ago? Were you here? No, you were not here. So you are hadith, temporally originated. You are, so just going back like 50 years, for most of you guys, you don't need to go back that far. You just go back, like maybe some of you need to go back 20 years, I guess. And you did not exist. And then just going back 100 years, 200 years, 2 million years, go back 2 billion years. And then at one point, all of this existence was not there. And Allah was there. So he wants you to see that antecedence, a sabq. And then if you see that antecedence, it will sink in your mind and your heart that your existence is so like trivial compared to his. It fades out. You compare anything with the eternal, and the result is what? Zero. Divide anything by the eternal, and the result is zero. But that is it when it comes to the concept of fana, or whatever the number is. Could be 1 million. It exists. It is a real number. It is not a zero. It exists. It's a real number. It's not a zero. But divided by eternity, and it is a zero. Compare it to eternity. Divided by is like compare it to eternity, and then it is a zero. So all of this existence compared to the eternal is a zero. It is the light of the candle in the middle of a summer day, a zero. And then the Shaykh says, فإن الانفصال والاتصال على عظم تفاوتهما في الاسم والرسم في العلة سيان. This is because both detachment and connection, those two stations, you see yourself detached, you see yourself connected, etc., despite their great variance in name and form, equally share the same flawed cause. What is it? It's clear now. The same flawed cause is that not al-ithniniya, not the recognition of two beings here, because we said that there are two beings. There is a creator and created creation. There are two beings, but the fact that you're seeing two beings. He doesn't want you to see two beings. He doesn't want you to see yourself, because as long as you're seeing yourself, you're coming in the middle, and that thick veil will obstruct your vision of the real, al-Haq subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is perceptual. But even perceptual, there will not be complete perceptual vanishment. What is intended here is that fana al-iradat is the highest of fana, and it is the most consistent with the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به, and that is what is intended. You never favor your wants and desires over his wants or demands of you. So you're always watching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're always conforming, complying with him. You never allow your ego to come between you and him, to distract you from him, to divert you from the journey to him. That is what is intended. But, basically reiterating that concept that, you should not see yourself is important, because our ego is the like I said, the thickest veil and the greatest hindrance in our journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the emphasis of the Shaykh in every third level of every station on this self-annihilation is not unwarranted, but we need to qualify it in a Sunni way. What is intended here in a Sunni way? And as we said before, the heritage, the legacy of the mashayikh, we cannot afford to forsake it. We cannot afford to give it in to hijackers who would take the legacy of the mashayikh and run away with it and explain it and interpret it in whichever way, like Sarey al-Saqati and Ma'ruf al-Karqi and al-Junaid and Abu Sulaiman al-Darani, and even the sort of the different tier, al-Jilani, al-Harawi, and Ibn Ata and Abu Madian, and all of those mashayikh, which are a different tier from the first ones that we mentioned, but all of them, we just can't afford to give them in to hijackers. We need to claim basically a Sunni explanation of tasawwuf and preach it and live by it, because it is also important for our hearts and it's important for our survival. It will all depend on emphasis on adherence to the Quran and the Sunnah, emphasis on adherence to the example and role model of the first community, emphasis on clarity versus symbolism, that is emphasis on al-Junaid's way versus al-Kharraz's way, Abu al-Qasim al-Junaid versus Abu Sa'id al-Kharraz. And al-Harawi used to like Abu Sa'id al-Kharraz more because he is more, he uses more symbolism than al-Junaid. He felt that al-Junaid is too stiff, because of his Sharia compliance made him careful, like extra careful. Despite the carefulness of al-Junaid, that made Imam al-Harawi favor Abu Sa'id al-Kharraz over al-Junaid. Despite that, al-Junaid was seen by al-Jariri in a dream after he died. Al-Jariri says that I have seen al-Junaid after he died in a dream, to just tell you about the side effects of symbolism. Al-Jariri says that he saw al-Junaid after he died, and he said to him, مَا فَعَلَ اللَّهُ بِكَ, and he said that al-Junaid said طاحت تلك الإشارات وفنيت تلك العبارات ولم تنفعنا إلا تسبيحات كنا نقولها في الغدوات. So al-Junaid said to him, طاحت تلك الإشارات, all of those symbols or all of the symbolism was lost, and وفنيت تلك العبارات, and all of those expressions vanished. All of the sort of the aphorisms and everything vanished. And nothing benefited us except the tasbihat, except the dhikr that we used to make in al-ghadawat. Al-ghadwa is the time between fajr and sunrise. And that's adhkar al-sabah. That's basically going back to Amal al-Yawm wal-Layla of the Prophet ﷺ, Ibn Sunni and Nasa'i and others, Adhkar al-Nawawi. You just go back to what the Prophet ﷺ used to do, and that would be enough. Enough? That would be more than enough. Can you ever do as much as he did in terms of Amal al-Yawm wal-Layla? And will we need any awrad to compete with the awrad of the Prophet ﷺ? We don't. Abu Sulaiman al-Darani, and this was quoted by al-Qushayri in his Risala al-Qushayriyya. Al-Qushayri says that Abu Sulaiman al-Darani was also seen in a dream, and he said, he was asked what did Allah do to you, and he said, غفر الله لنا وما كان شيء أضر علينا من إشارات القوم. Nothing was harmful, nothing hurt us more than the symbolism of al-Qawm, the people, the masters of the path. That Allah had forgiven us, but nothing hurt us more, nothing was more harmful to us. وما كان شيء أضر علينا من إشارات القوم. More than the symbolisms of the people. The same was reported from Abu Sahl, the As-Suluki, and others. So clarity. So adherence to the revelation, the role model of the first community, clarity versus symbolism. The third one is دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك. This hadith is extremely important. Leave out that which causes you doubt to that which does not cause you doubt. If there is something that is controversial, is it bid'ah, is it sunnah? Is there enough sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ basically to fill your schedule with good ibadat and good azkar? And absolutely, there is more than enough. You'll never be able to catch up with the things that are established to be sunan of the Prophet ﷺ and good deeds that come to us from the Prophet ﷺ. So دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك. Leave out which causes you doubt to that which does not cause you doubt. And there is so much room in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that you will never need to do anything that is controversial or that you are unsure about or uncomfortable about. So these are just like simple measures, simple principles that we hold on to while we basically reclaim the Sufi discourse, the Sunni Sufi discourse. قولوا قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.